No, I don't want the long one. Contact
I was gonna say that's the one I usually want. But Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyid al-Anbiya wa Mursaleen Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Today, inshallah, we're going to get into a new chapter, and this is chapter 9. This is on malediction, which is a translation for li'an. Li'an, or malediction, is cursing, right? So when getting into this habit of cursing is the next thing, and the next discussion that Imam Ghazāli mentions, and the next thing that he talks about, rahimahullah. So he says that malediction or li'an can apply to animals, it can apply to inanimate objects, and it can apply to people. I'm sure that there are many times that we have been frustrated with different things that we cursed, right? So if our car doesn't start, right, which is an inanimate object, or my cat that peed on the sofa the other day, like I cursed out my cat, you know what I mean? So like it happens. This is something that we do, is something that we fall into, and it is something that it's not strange. So an animal, like, whether it be a riding animal or whether it be a pet, inanimate objects, sometimes there are things that we use. Okay, I'm assuming it's still working, but so when we talk about how things happen, or when am I supposed to have God consciousness, I'm supposed to have it now. And if I'm having it now, is there a time that I can forget? Absolutely. So what do? I try to have it again. And having that continuous effort is the essence of taqwa. Having that continuous effort and that continuous battle of constantly trying to be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and having consciousness of Him azza wa jal is what taqwa actually is, what sincerity is. There are some narrations, and again, Ghazāli, he always begins his sections and his discussions with a number of narrations. From those narrations, do not curse, saying Allah's curse or Allah's anger, or with the hellfire. And don't curse people with these things. Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, he said, do not curse any group of people at all, except that it will be fulfilled. Out of fear for it being fulfilled or falling onto someone, we should not curse people. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he said, a land is not cursed except that it says Allah's curse is our disobedience of Him. In the Hadith in Muslim, those who curse excessively cannot be intercessors or martyrs on the day of judgment. This is a warning for all of us, and to make sure that we control our tongues. Remember, this entire section is called Afat al-Lisan, or faults of the tongue. We should always do our best to protect what we're saying, so that we do not hurt others, so that we do not speak ill of others. Anas radiallahu anhu said, a man was riding with the Messenger of Allah, so the man cursed his riding animal, and the Prophet said, Ya Abdullah. And over here, the Abdullah is used just like we use like John Doe, right? It's just used to leave somebody so that you're not able to actually identify the person. He says, do not travel with us on a cursed riding animal. And it was his sallallahu alaihi wasallam way of joking with him. It's like, hey, listen, don't do that. And kind of prodding him, encouraging him not to do that. How does he define it? So he said rejection or distancing from Allah, and this is not permissible except for the one who has been described with that particular distancing. These include disbelief. So disbelief is a reason to be cursed, and another reason is oppression, if somebody is oppressed. And why is that? So you can say things like Allah's curse is on the oppressors, or Allah's curse is on the disbelievers. Here, have we identified any individual? No, there's no individual that's actually being identified here. And not just that, you will find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he'll say that وَلَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. This is something that you find throughout the Quran. You'll find it in the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where Allah curses the disbelievers or curses oppressors. So what characteristics deserve cursing? So disbelief, heresy, and sin. So he mentions here very clearly and very categorically. Yes.
Is it okay if we go back to
We can take it as a question for next time, inshallah. Like, so you have disbelief, heresy, and sin. Disbelief, kufr, heresy, bid'ah, and sin, fisq. So even these entail levels, because how these are actually applied is something that's important. How these are applied and how we deal with them is something that's really important. So cursing a group of people with dislike characteristics. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we curse mubtadi', if we curse the innovators, or we curse the kafir, in general, right? So we're talking about general groups of people who these apply to, or the fusaq, right? So these, now we are saying that Allah's curse is upon groups of people who fit these characteristics without actually specifying anyone in particular. Or you can get more specific with groups of people, like the Jews, the Christians, the Majus, the Sabians. Qadariya are it's a heretic sect that was of old, right? It's not something they've since gone extinct. They still don't exist. The Khawarij, they still exist. The Rawafid, who we call the Shia now, the fornicators, oppressors, and those that consume riba. So over here you see different types of people, right? There are different types of people, and there are different categories of people who Imam Ghazāli actually talks about and who he mentions here. He says all of these are permissible. So you want to curse these groups of people, he's saying that's fine, except save cursing heretics. So he was saying here that you cannot curse the Qadariyah, you cannot curse the Khawarij, you cannot curse the Rawafid. Why? Because to know heresy, to understand innovation, requires a depth of knowledge. This is something that's really important to keep in mind. If I do not understand what bid'ah is, if I don't understand what innovation is, I cannot learn how to apply it. And if I do not know how to apply it, what happens? He says that unless there's a direct text about what something specifically, like someone specifically is doing that is clear to everyone, and somebody is calling, for example, they're saying that there's a prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, na'udhu billah. Clear, right? There's clear heresy in that, and this is something that we as an ummah, we can openly call against, and we can clearly say that Allah's curse is upon people who believe this, or someone who's trying to introduce the sixth prayer, or somebody who's trying to remove a prayer, or someone who's trying to say Hajj is not a pillar, someone who's trying to, for example, permit the consumption of alcohol, or lying, or stealing, right? So all of these individual things that we're trying to remove or adjust, all of those things can clearly be cursed. Why? Because there's direct texts, like we have nusus, we have ayat, we have a hadith that actually and specifically warn against those things. But he says here something that I really liked, and I think it's a very much a take home for all of us. He says that the layman should be prohibited from doing this. And the layman are most Muslims. Most Muslims should be prohibited from doing this. Why? Because all it does is bring a reactionary response. The moment that I call somebody, he's like, oh, you're mubtada', you're a heretic. What is he going to do? He's like, no, you're a heretic. and that all that happens is you end up having this discourse where you are going back and forth. And what does it lead to? Conflict and corruption and mistrust. Because if I'm assuming, and I walk into a community, or I walk into a masjid, and if I have this mentality of Muslims being heretics, what am I going to start doing? Huh? What do you guys think? I'm somebody who walks in, like, you know what I mean? I know it's like there's mubtada' around here. There are heretics here. What kind of I developed a sense of paranoia. Absolutely. What else? So that paranoia is another word for distrust. So now I don't trust the people around me. I've created a sense of distrust. And now not only have I created a sense of distrust, what am I doing in the community? Right, I'm sowing distrust in the community. I have accomplished nothing. Not only have I not accomplished something, I've actually digressed and regressed. I've taken things in a negative way. I thought I was protecting the community from bid'ah, but what did I actually do? I caused more confusion and fitna. And why did I do that? Because of my ignorance and or arrogance. Because the nice thing about this, if I have this thought of heresy, and I believe that they're heretics, then where do I stand? I'm guided. And if I'm guided, that means that I am like everybody's a peasant, right? in front of my guidance. I am upon the haqq, I am upon the truth, and I will bring the light to the people, and I will guide all of you misunderstanding individuals. May Allah protect us from that. Yes.
Also, one reason he widespread all this slander,
Yeah.
and backbite, is because they're probably jealous.
Yeah, absolutely. And jealousy stems from insecurity, which stems from our own, again, like it's that air of arrogance that's behind all of these things. It's really terrifying how far arrogance can actually push people. Where I come in and I feel that I'm on such a pedestal that I have the right now to judge and look down on the people around me. And I have no idea where that person stands with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like it's not fair. It's completely unfair. And I've put myself in a maqam, I've put myself in a position. How do I even know I'm deserving of that? Right? Like, and what brings that surety? Yes. Ahsant. Sure. Okay, so let's explore the ignorance a little bit, the ignorance defense, right? So there are people who definitely are ignorant. I don't doubt that at all. But what is the ignorant person obligated to do? To seek. And if I know that and I recognize that I'm ignorant, not only am I obligated to seek, I'm also not allowed to what? Judge and impose. Whatever I believe, whatever my belief system is, I'm allowed to impose that on myself, right? I can, like, whatever I believe. If I believe that, chicken needs to be slaughtered at a 37-degree angle, right? No. And your muharramat, when it comes to lying, stealing, drinking alcohol, right? Is there zina? Is there any difference of opinion on those things? No, there isn't. In those areas, it's fine, right? But if I'm coming and I'm imposing now and be like, oh, I don't know about the way you prayed.
I don't know about this scholar.
Right? I don't know about this scholar. I don't know. Yes, go ahead.
Practical example was happened today.
Sure.
One of my family members said, may Allah curse the one that stole my Amazon package.
Yeah.
Honestly, at first was like, oh, you don't know what that situation was, but I don't know if that was, I should.
We're at, this is specific issue. Inshallah, we're actually going to get to it because Ghazāli actually talks about it. But the reality is that many of us hide under the guise of commanding the good and forbidding the evil to impose a lot of our own personal beliefs and our own personal levels of piety. Right. So where does it apply? So if somebody, for example, they consider buying a house through conventional bank, it's like, oh, I can't believe so-and-so bought a house through conventional bank. Okay, like, did you? No, just very, and I think that having that perspective is very important. It's like, okay, do you think it's haram? Yes. Then don't do it. Right. And it's as simple as that. If you believe as an individual that this thing is haram and you know that there's a khilaf in it, the fact that there is a difference of opinion means that whatever other people are doing must be respected. regardless of how convinced I am on my position and how correct I feel. Because at the end of the day, if I feel something is right, that means all the other opinions are what? Are wrong, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no issue with that. Yeah, actually had an interesting conversation with a priest and a rabbi one time. He's like, yeah, but don't you guys call like non-Muslims kafir? And I was like, okay, what am I to you? I was like, being a non-Jew, what am I? Am I destined to paradise? Like, it's like, or being a non-Christian, I don't believe Jesus is my savior. Well, what do you have to say about that? Like, and I was like, I wasn't trying to make fun of them, but I was like, at the end of the day, by having a belief, you automatically are saying what? That the other ones are wrong.
Right.
But that's not a problem. That's not an issue, because it's more so, how am I dealing with you even though I disagree with you? Right? That's more important. And that's even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about ukhuwa, when he talks about brotherhood, he says, innamal mu'minuna ikhwa. And what does he follow that by? Faslahu. He says that the believers are surely a fraternity, they're surely a brotherhood. So what do? Faslahu. So try to reconcile. When are you reconciling? When you're differing, right? You're not going to reconcile if everybody agrees. And that's another sign for us too, that the Muslim community is not monolithic. It's just not. If you hold a certain view, or if you things like that, and where does this especially show up? It shows up in political views. It's very sad. I find it mind-boggling on how you have people be like, okay, this is the Islamic position, we must support BLM. Okay, if I don't support it, then what? Am I not Muslim now? No, I didn't realize this was the sixth pillar of Islam. You know what I mean? Like, when it comes to political thought, and look how like silent it's in the room right now. Like, everybody's like so tense. Like, and this is something we need to think about. When it comes to politics, when it comes to political thought, both of these are administrative theories on how to reach a solution. That's it. You're going to think, if you lean left, you're going to think bigger government is going to help. If you lean right, you're going to think smaller government is going to help. And that's all. It's like, in summary, that's all it is. But at the end of the day, they are both opinions. Like, they're both opinions, and neither matters. It's not. It's my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that really matters. And if you're passionate about one side or the other politically, may Allah bless you. Like, go for it. Like, do your thing. I don't care what side of the aisle you honestly stand on. Like, do you believe in Allah? Do you believe in His messenger? Do you pray? Do you fast? Do you do you do all those things? You do? All right, well, you have rights on me, and I have to make sure that I'm fulfilling those rights. That's it. I don't have to agree with you. You know what I mean? And that's totally fine. That's totally normal. That is what actual healthy brotherhood looks like. And that's where brotherhood shows. It's when we differ. It's not going to show if I agree with you. What is the challenge? The challenge is that if we both eat pizza and you like pineapple on your pizza and I don't, what do we do? Like, that is the challenge. This is a heresy, right? This is a bid'ah. Yeah.
Except for the barbecue.
The barbecue pizza?
Oh, no.
Unacceptable.
There is no way.
Unacceptable. There is no reconciliation with the barbecue pizza. No, but subhanAllah, and that's the amazing thing of brotherhood, and that's the amazing thing about Islam, that this is where discussion happens, and having that diversity of thought is what makes the ummah so successful. There's no way Islam would have spread if everybody believed the same thing. It's just not possible. There are certain things that we do agree upon, and we actually do them pretty well. Believing in Allah alone, believing in the finality of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is there a masjid that we can't go to in the world where they'll be like, yeah, no brown people? Is there any? Have you ever heard of a masjid like that?
Right.
No. Uh-huh.
It's like something like that.
No, that's fine. I mean, you're more than welcome to believe that, but I believe you're falling into that doubt we were talking about a little while ago.
Right.
Are you sure that's not from a pedestal?
No.
Okay, alhamdulillah. But I can walk into any masjid and I can pray. When it's time to break fast, I'm going to be invited to sit down. When it comes time to zakat, I don't go and give my zakat and be like, what type of people are you giving this to? When I go to make hajj, I'll be like, and Turks are going this year? No, yeah, I mean, like, we don't, like, as an ummah, we have that spiritual unity. Alhamdulillah. Like, we really do. And that's something for everyone to be proud of. We really should. That's something we should, like with the flag, we should walk with that. And even when it comes to Muslims being hurt around the world, when was the last time, be like, what part of the world was that? Nobody cares. Like, Muslims are being hurt, our hearts bleed. Like, alhamdulillah, like we still have that. Like we still have that shu'ur al-iman. We still have that at least that much iman when we hear about Muslims, regardless of where they are, regardless of where they're from, regardless of the sect that they follow. SubhanAllah, think about that. Regardless of the sect that they follow, we're still upset that they're being hurt. That is what iman is. That is what ukhuwah is. I mean, we fail in other ways, but you know what I mean? Like, there's still a lot of stuff that we should be happy about. You know, and there really is a lot of stuff that we should parade. There should be. Like, we should be proud of those things. And these things that are shortcomings, like, alhamdulillah, we still have room to work on it, and we still have room to fix it. And then, I mean, that's great. It's wonderful. Yes.
So I remember hearing growing up that, like, oh, there's gonna be like so many different sects of Islam.
Sure.
Close to the day of judgment, and only one will go to Jannah. Right?
Yes.
Like, it seems sort of silly, but
Yeah.
like, I mean, diversity of thought's important. Like,
Yeah.
do you feel like there is a true opinion,
Uh-huh.
and that others are wrong in some sense?
So
Is that
that's a good question. The first one would be like, there is a difference of opinion on the authenticity of the hadith. That's the first problem.
Right.
For those scholars that do say it's authentic, why are all of those other groups Muslim?
because they believe in the Quran, maybe they say they
I'm
do.
just asking. No, I'm saying, like, even if you take the hadith, if taraqat ummati ala 73 firqa, that my ummah has been divided into 73 sects, and only one of them are going to be in paradise. Like, who said that the other 72 are Muslim? So you have scholars like Ibn Hazm was the first. He has that Firq wal Furuq. He's the first one to talk about it. He was like 460 something. It's not like, and why did the Prophet ﷺ say that? Oh, sorry, that's my, I don't even know why it's muting. Everybody look away from the screen. I know everybody stared diligently, like, who? It's like, who is the Imam talking to? Right. So, but I mean, that is my question. And the thing is, like, the scholars who took that to mean that, oh, this applies to Muslims, and then they started defining how to differentiate between them. The Prophet ﷺ, do you really think he told us that so that we would sit down and start dividing each other? Abadan. It's like, this is not even from his character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anything he did, like, his entire life was what? Bringing people together. It was never about dividing people. He didn't go, you know, the companions didn't sit there and be like, all right, you know, like it's like, yeah, I remember that mentality we were talking about having that paranoid mentality, that not only do you cause dissent internally, but you also cause it externally. And wallahu alam, like I said, who is to claim and who says that this hadith is talking about Muslims? Because even within Muslims, you have a spectrum of thought. You do. How do we deal with that? Now, will you have some scholars who will say, no, like, okay, well, yeah, fine, but there is still an Ahl Sunnah. Right? You know what I mean? Like, so the thing is, like, even if you go outside of Ahl Sunnah, like, what does that mean? What does that entail? Like, who defines it? You know, the amazing thing about Ahl Sunnah, you know who defines Ahl Sunnah? The people who write about Ahl Sunnah. Like, it's like no bias, right? You know, is it like, raise your hand if you don't want to be from the saved sect? You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to be from the saved sect. So what are they going to do? They're going to do their best to defend their thoughts. They're going to do their best to defend their ideology. They're going to do the best to defend whatever mission statement it is that they're trying to push forward. So like I said, this is one of the pushbacks that I have. Like, who says that it actually applies to Muslims? And people might be like, okay, well, what about the Jews and the Christians? Like, they're caught anyway. Like, who cares? Like, you know, like they're disbelievers. Like, why does it matter? The idea behind it is like, be careful in following in what? In their footsteps. That's it. That's all the warning is. Like, don't fall into their footsteps by what? By differing, just like they differed. Like, you know, just like they differed, you are also going to differ. So beware of differing. Don't sit there and start putting labels. Do the labels help anything? Not really. Like, the labels just made things worse, because now we can label people, right? That now we can just be like Khariji, Rafidi, Qadri, Salafi, you know, like Ashari, Maturidi, you know, and you can just start putting labels on people. It didn't help anything at all. And if you're talking about from like an academic standpoint, it helps when you're talking about like juristic schools or ways to understand things. Like that's classification, which is different. If I want ways to classify things, that's cool. That makes sense. But to judge people, it's not why the religion came. And may Allah protect us. Cursing innovators, stop it. Don't do it. Okay, it's very simple. I don't think there's. I think it's very clear here, and we've all experienced this to some extent or form. That this reactionary response. The moment that we start calling somebody a heretic, very naturally, what is he going to do? He's going to call the person who's calling him a heretic. Cursing an individual, this is the most problematic. So, actually naming people, specifically Zayd, may Allah curse him, or he's a disbeliever, or he's a sinner, or he's an innovator. For example, all of these are things that should be avoided and extremely problematic. So if their cursing has been established in the Sharia by name, then it's okay. Then it's fine. So like what? So you guys think of examples? Abu Lahab, perfect. I'm sorry? No, like specific people. Fir'aun. Huh? Qarun. Ahl Badr, right? The kuffar who died in Badr.
Except the people of the Jews.
So, I mean, anyway, so these specific people, the Prophet ﷺ, even when he came out on Badr, he cursed specific people who died. And we'll talk about why he ﷺ could do that. So those are groups of people, right? So basically, and because it's a type of oppression, and you're taking more advantage of those people. So like Fir'aun, Abu Jahl, and their disbelief has been established in the Sharia. Basically, I can say a person died on disbelief when Allah or His Messenger tell me. That is the only time I can do that. Did George Bush die on disbelief? I mean, probably, but but at the end of the day, Allah knows best. Like we just don't know. The only people, like, because it's something that is ghaibi, it's something that's unseen. Who is to say that any of us is guaranteed paradise? Like, if I can't guarantee paradise for myself, how can I guarantee hellfire for another? Yeah, so the people living today, unless the Prophet ﷺ told us, like, for example, is there an evil person that will come in the future who we know about that we can say for sure is in the hellfire? Yes. Who? The Dajjal, right? That's a simple one. Right? Or is there a person coming in the future we know for sure is going to paradise? Isa, right? Like these two people we know for sure. Why? Because we have very specific texts talking about them as individuals. Is the Dajjal real? Okay, anyway, so what about today? So if I said Zayd, may Allah's curse be upon him, and he's a Jew, this is still problematic. Why is it problematic? Because there's a chance that he will accept Islam. So what gives us the right to curse when there is potential that person can come back, right? We shouldn't take this decision into our own hands. Ghazāli gets into a bit of a discussion concerning this. So he's saying, okay, well, when you're talking about the disbeliever, it's different than talking about a Muslim, because when I say rahimahullah to the Muslim, when I make dua for the Muslim, I'm talking about the state he's in currently. So when I curse the disbeliever, I'm talking about the state that he is in currently. Does that make sense? So that's the counter argument, that it's okay for me to curse a person who's openly showing disbelief, because at that point in time, he's showing disbelief. So Ghazāli, he counters on this. He says that this doesn't actually apply. Because when I say rahimahullah, I'm actually making dua for this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give this person firmness, which is the reason that he can be eligible to receive that mercy. And versus saying the same thing, when I say la'anallah to the disbeliever, I'm not asking Allah to keep him upon disbelief. Making dua for disbelief is actually what? It's disbelief itself. How can I seek disbelief? Are you guys following? Like seeking disbelief in and of itself, and asking for disbelief for someone else, that in itself is disbelief. So what does he say? So when I say rahimahullah, this is actually a request for firmness. La'natullah, if I believe it's a request for firmness and I'm making it on that, then this is disbelief. This is a huge problem. This is a huge issue. And that's what it can lead to if that is what I believe and what it is that I'm saying. Sure. For if I say like Zayd, it was the example he gave. So if there's Zayd here in front of me and I was like, la'natullah ala Zayd, and I believe in my heart that I'm wishing disbelief on this person. Because what is the reason that he's being cursed? We said that there are two major reasons. What are they? Disbelief and oppression, right? These are the two major reasons. So if I'm doing it because he's a disbeliever, am I making dua that Allah keep him upon disbelief? Because the reason that he's receiving the la'an, the reason that he's receiving the curse is that disbelief. The same reason that the Muslim, he's receiving the rahmah because of what? Because of his belief. So that, I mean, again, it's a, I can see what he's saying. It's just, that's a good, oh, where do you go? He got so upset I wasn't agreeing with the cursing, right? But so what is permissible to say then? So he says, may Allah's curse be on the one who dies on disbelief and not on the one who dies on Islam. You start getting into a lot of mental acrobats here. At this point, it's probably better to what? Just shut up. Like, you know, like you don't need to talk, because you find people who are always floundering between these two extremes. أو يتوب عليهم أو يعذبهم فإنهم ظالمون. That whether God relents toward them or punishes them is not for you, meaning that you don't choose. Even you, Ya Nabi Allah, even you, Ya Prophet of Allah, you don't get to choose. They are the wrongdoers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who will decide. Because why? Even those people might seek tawbah, they might seek recompense. So when can this still apply? So someone who clearly dies on disbelief, you can say that this dies on that, like the last words they say, you know what I mean? The last words they say is like, I refuse to believe in Allah. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only situation where you might have some type of clarity. But even in that situation, it should generally be avoided. So you have the story of Sa'id ibn al-As. Basically what happened here is that they were walking by this grave, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, whose grave is this? So Abu Bakr, he's like, oh, it's Sa'id ibn al-As. This guy, he was treacherous, and he was really adamant against fighting Allah and his messenger. And Sa'id ibn al-As's son heard. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, he used to be generous, and he used to give, and he used to this, even though he wasn't Muslim. But he said that he was generous and he used to give him. So the Prophet said, what did he tell him? He said, stop cursing. He told Abu Bakr. He said to Abu Bakr, he said, stop cursing. And this said the story, Nu'ayman, what happened was that this individual, he got caught drinking, and then he got flogged. A few days later, he got caught drinking again, and he got flogged. He got caught drinking again. And then a companion cursed him. And then a companion cursed him. The Prophet said, why are you cursing Muslim? Like, stop. Yes. Is that the one where he said, don't help shaitan? And don't help shaitan against your brother. No, you there, subhanAllah. But what about Yazid? I always like, so his little tangential discussions are always fun. The first of that, is it permissible to curse Yazid? What do you guys think? It's from Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar. I know, right? I have to. You Shafis, man. You don't let us have fun, man. So because the fact that whether he killed Hussein or not has not been definitively established, then you can't. And the reason for that is because this applies to any Muslim. I can't accuse a Muslim of a major sin. I can't. I don't have the right to do that without clear evidence, without definitive evidence. And so I can't accuse them of a major sin. As such, you shouldn't curse them. I mean, Yazid did other stuff though, but sure. Anyway, He brings some narrations that whoever accuses his brother with disbelief, then it will fall on one of them. Cursing the dead is even worse. Masruq, he came to Aisha radiallahu anha, and she asked him, she said, what did so-and-so do? May Allah curse him. So I said he died. So she said, may Allah have mercy on him. He said, how? Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So she said, the Prophet of Allah said, do not curse the dead. They're already receiving what they had put forward. Is it permissible to curse the one who killed Hussein? So he said, it is possible that he repented. So it's probably even better. Like, there's a lot of excuses here. Just Ghazāli just doesn't let us curse them. He said, just like Wahshi after he killed Hamza. So after he killed Hamza, he repented and he came back. So, I mean, and the thing is, like, when he gives examples like this, it kind of, it's like such a buzzkill. People take cursing very easy, and this is one of the reasons that he actually talks about it. And this is why he really puts it down and says this is something that should be avoided. He says, as for the ones who clearly died on disbelief or particular characteristics, that these individuals can be cursed, but it's better to busy oneself with remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, if you're going to go through all that effort to come up with a wording so you can still, like, curse someone, like, use your brain power to remember Allah. You know what I mean? Like, there are better ways to do it. There are better ways to use it. And if you can't even do that, you know what your other substitute is? Just silence. Just be quiet. It's always safe. Yes.
Someone wanted to say something, why don't you make it dua for guidance for that person?
Sure. I mean, if I'm really upset with someone, I probably don't want to do anything for them. What you're saying is, like, so the thing is, there's like levels to forgiveness, right? The height of that level is like when you're hurt by that person, you make dua for them. Like, that's your first reaction because you're just that pious. I don't think a lot of us are there yet, So I think at the least it's just like remembering Allah or making dhikr or being silent. This is like, these are like lower level responses, but I think with practice, they're getting to that point is the ideal for sure. I agree with that 100%. So, and you can't make bad dua for someone either. Like, may Allah take away his health, or may Allah break his legs. You know what I mean? Like, those aren't good dua, and he likens them very much to cursing. So if, like, may Allah cause him to be oppressed. Like, these aren't things that should happen. These are things that you shouldn't do. May Allah not give you health. May Allah not give you peace. It's just a bad look. Like, don't do that. Like, and it very much is like cursing. It's like, oh, well, at least I'm not cursing him. No, it's not. You know what I mean? We still would hope, like Nazim said, that for guidance and for help. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, for a negative dua? No, I don't think it works like that. Like, it's like just as a reminder for yourself, like, may Allah break his legs, and the angel's like, yes, and you too. No, like, no, I don't. No. I hope it doesn't work like that. Yeah. May Allah protect us. Yeah. Like, so this is the end of the chapter. I'm actually going to be traveling for the next 3 weeks, inshallah. So I hope you guys enjoy your winter break as well. Yes. And go check out your Christmas lights. Yeah. Is music haram? Excellent question. There's a spectrum of opinions concerning music. I think the Malikiya are probably the lightest concerning it. They even allow instruments. And then the stricter you go, I think the Hanaf are probably the strictest. They only allow like very specific instruments. But like a cappella and stuff, I don't think anybody really has a problem with. You have some modern, I think there's some modern Najdi opinions that take it pretty harsh. And they say like, no, music is haram altogether. But yeah, most of them will use the hadith in Bukhari, right? That there will come a time where people will drink alcohol and call it by another name, and they'll listen to music and call it by another name. But even Imam Bukhari, he doesn't use the hadith to prohibit music. He uses it to prohibit alcohol. No, that's what I'm saying. So even the hadith that what it's talking about, this is the strongest hadith, by the way. So if you want to talk about the people who do prohibit music, the only hadith that they can use is this hadith in Bukhari. The problem is Imam Bukhari, it's not even up to his standard, because he doesn't bring it, like if there's a hadith that he finds to his standard, he brings the entire chain up to him. This is not one of those hadith. He'll just say, he starts with qala. There's a break in the chain and he brings a hadith to show that even he finds some weakness in it. The second thing is the chapter heading that he uses the hadith for, he doesn't use it to prohibit music. He uses it to prohibit alcohol. So even the strongest proof, quote unquote, or the strongest text that people have to prohibit music, it's not that strong. Yeah, it's mu'allaq. Yeah, ahsant.
What are like the stringed instruments?
Even string. So that's the thing. If you don't have a clear hadith that talks about the prohibition of these things, how can you prohibit them? And so a secondary excuse that people use is they'll say they'll be like, oh, it'll take you away from remembering Allah, right?
Right.
Yeah, you guys have heard that one too.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
so does
right.
soccer.
We can't have the
Like-
bad and the same hearts.
Yeah, but those aren't prophetic statements, right? Those are just things that like certain scholars say. But so saying that if I play soccer, or if I go to the gym, or if I'm playing video games, or if I'm reading a nonfiction dictionary, right? You know, all of those things will take me away from Allah. But since when is that the standard? The standard, when we talk about taking away from Allah, if I'm taking from two things, right? If I'm taking Allah's right, or I'm taking other people's rights. That is where the standard comes in when you talk about taking away from Allah. If I'm listening to music so much that I'm leaving my prayers, that's a problem. If I'm listening to music so much that I'm not giving my family their rights, that's not permissible. You know what I mean? Like I'm just so engrossed in it. Like, and even when we talk about, if we look at the context of the hadith, it's very clear that the problem here is the music industry and the music culture, and not the music itself. Because if you look at the culture, what happens? At most concerts, what are you going to see? Right, you're going to see a lot of drugs. You're going to see a lot of drunkenness, and not just that. There's going to be a lot of fornication. Like, you know, these things happen within the music industry. And the Prophet ﷺ, it's clear that there's a prohibition of the lifestyle, not necessarily of the music. I mean, there's a lot of people who listen to music, and like it doesn't. If I ask you right now, okay, a person who listens to music, what evil does this beget? Other than the spiritual, like let's remove the spiritual aspect. With alcohol, it's pretty clear, right? From gambling, it's pretty clear. But when it comes to something like music, if you don't have a clear text like pork is a clear text. But if you have something that's unclear like music, what is the evil that it begets by listening to it? Even inappropriate stuff. Okay, there's explicit content, and I'm not saying like, please, I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just saying like, even if we take the worst of the music, like the one that's the most explicit, and blah, blah, what happens? It's not ideal, and not just that. It might cause you to change the way you speak, right? But those things we have to change. And if I'm in an environment where that is affecting me, then what should I do? I stop listening to that type of music. Or if I have a problem, like if I have a problem with the other gender, like if I have a problem with women, it's probably not a good idea to listen to love music all the time, right? You know what I mean? Like, because it's only going to stir my heart more. You know, but those are individual applications, and who is going to decide that individual application? I am. That's what taqwa is, right? You know, eventually, what does taqwa boil down to is like, and that a lot of that discussion involves with being honest with myself, and that is usually the hardest thing. Like, is this affecting me in a good way? And then a lot of times, you know, we trick ourselves like, yeah, you know, it's good, like, you know, but and it's like, no, it's not, like. You know, and how do you know? Because you have that little voice in the back of your head. You know what I mean? Like your heart is kind of like gnawing at you, like, dude, you know, like you shouldn't be doing this. Like this is not a good idea. And then when we're like, shut up, then you know there's a problem. Okay. But there is a lot of self-control there, honesty with ourselves. Like, you know, I mean, that's what taqwa is. That's what awareness is. Having, you know, going to different scholars or muftis to get answers for our problems, that's not taqwa. Taqwa is when my heart is telling me not to do something, even with all the answers that I get, and then I don't do it. Don't listen to music.
Wasn't there something talking about basically like you shouldn't have like your belly, you should have like
your stomach shouldn't touch your thighs, yeah.
like is there like
so the thing is, there are a number of hadith that describe how a man should pray, for no doubt, right? And from those hadith, it's like, you know, these are all signs of laziness. You know, don't put your stomach on your thighs, don't sit with your feet out. You know, like just like iftirash. I'm trying to think what other. I mean, the 7 places of sajda you have to do. Hanafis differ over the nose. Yeah. Oh, don't like a dog. Don't put the entirety of your arm down. Don't sit like a camel. And there's 2 ways to understand that. Yeah, I just didn't make this any easier, did I?
We're not like getting it.
Yeah, getting up, how you getting up, there's different ways of doing it. But the thing is, like, at the end of the day, all the positions are agreed upon. Everybody understands that you have to stand. Everybody understands that you have to make ruku'ah. Everybody understands that you have to do sajda. Everybody understands that you have to sit between the 2 sajda, the jalsat, the tashahhud. How you do those particular things, alhamdulillah, in general, you have the madhab explaining them. It's just a matter of looking back and choosing, like, okay, this one fits, this one makes the most sense, this one's the easiest for me, and just do it.
Back to that, okay, so speak about this stuff. What about like, you said we're not supposed to be like a dog when we're incident, right?
So scholars will say that applies to men, and
Only to men?
yeah.
Okay.
So it's just like you said, there were hadith about men, but not women.
Yeah, it was very clear.
So there's no guidance.
There is. In general, they pray like men, but so the only added thing that you'll find is, like, because the Prophet ﷺ always encouraged them to modesty, the madahib have expressed different ways for women to express the modesty during prayer, and like showing that. And so they will tell women that you should pray with your arms flat, because it's the most, because we had talked about this even like in how to deal with a woman when you wrap her for her burial preparation. And we had talked about that. We said that you tie the hair into one braid and you put it back. And what was the purpose of doing all that? Huh?
Not to see.
No, to hide the profile, right? So we had talked about the number of wraps and the number of things because you do your best to hide the profile of the woman when she's going to get buried, because even in that situation, you want to what? Protect her modesty. So, and they're saying basically what happens is, like, okay, how does a woman protect her modesty in prayer? Like, what is the best way for her to not show her curvature? What is the best way for her not to show her profile? Okay. And that's where the madhab talk about, like, okay, well, yeah, for the man to sit like that, he shouldn't, because nobody cares about a man's profile. But like for women, there should be a certain way that she sits or a certain way she makes sajda to protect that profile.
You know that there's some, you might find some books that shows like just this like book for men how to pray and book for men how to pray.
Yeah.
And like you might find in the man, like the man should raise his hands up to the ear.
Yeah, and a woman not as much.
Yeah.
You know, and again, like, yeah.
7 differences between.
Yeah, you'll find like 7. Some
Yeah.
mentioned more, some mentioned less.
Right,
It's like, no. I mean, I'm glad everybody prays. Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
So this topic today around like cursing, what is the application like modern day, right? Because like I don't see people being like, oh well, curse so and so.
Sure.
Like,
So
how do we
no, so like
think about that?
we do it. So like when we use explicit language sometimes, essentially what are we doing?
But is that the same level?
It's the same type. It's the same way, because it's just a different expression of the cursing, because cursing is going to take different forms in different cultures.
Sure.
Right? Does that make sense? Like, so if I'm cutting an onion, for example, and I accidentally cut my finger,
Yeah.
what am I going to do?
Okay, so
Be like, this, you know what I mean? Like, either I'm going to curse the knife, I'm going to curse the onion, I'm going to curse cooking. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like layers and levels to it. You know what I mean? Like, so it really depends. So what do? Again, the cursing is usually, when is it said? Am I just like walking and I'm like, F Zaid? You know what I mean? No, it's like I'm really upset, and it's usually a reaction to something, right? Like I'm usually reacting to something. This is just another expression of sabr. Right, because sabr is an expression of an emotional response. Like it's basically emotional intelligence and how we express ourselves when we are dealt with something that hurts us. You know, if I'm putting my foot down on something and I miss it and I hit the edge of the table, you know what I mean? Like you might flip the table over. You know what I mean? You have to learn how to express that. Nobody's saying don't be upset, don't be angry. You know what I mean? That's fine, but how do you actually express that? That's the practical application of it. In having that self-control and how we express certain things, because there are two substitutes that he gave us for that. What were those substitutes? Either using the opportunity to remember Allah or being silent. And I, alhamdulillah, like I remember there's some friends who they had actually told me that, you know, we have to train ourselves for a lot of things. So when he was like, man, every time I fell, you know what I mean? Like if I fell or something happened, I would curse. Like I would use explicit language. I would curse. He's like, now, alhamdulillah, like I've tried to train myself and get into the habit. Every time I fall, I say Bismillah. Huh? He didn't stop falling. Like the falling didn't stop. Just his reaction to the falling stopped. I don't think there ever reaches a point where we stop falling unless we get paralyzed. But that's I guess that's worse. Yeah. Yeah.
If there is a tyrannic politician and everybody knows he's Iran, but
Yeah.
there's no court.
Yeah, sure.
No, like,
Yeah, yeah.
clear-cut
Sure.
evidence. It's established, like everybody knows. Can you curse that
I would-
politician specifically by name?
So
Of course, not in front of him, but
so I mean, I would, if you're not in America, I'm not really sure how good idea that would be. Like,
of course, I'm saying, not in front of him, that is
yeah.
he's fine. It's-
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like in India, it's okay, right? So I mean, I guess it would depend on the individual situation. You know what I mean? Like if you know, if there's a person out and like he's just like a mass murderer, you know what I mean? Like he's going committing genocides and stuff like that. I'd be hard pressed to say no. I'd be like, yo, please curse away. Like, may Allah remove that person. You know what I mean? Like, nobody. And the chances of like historically, I can't think of mass murderers who like made Toba. it's like I just killed 20 million people, but I feel bad. You know, it's like you don't really find that.
But sure,
Yeah.
you did that. How sure are we that this dictators actually did that? It's just like the Yazid case.
That's true.
We cannot use
That's a good point. But I mean, there are some though that will openly say it, like, you know, and we've taken care of the problem in such and such area, or you know, we've taken care of such and such people. They might not use direct language, like, you know, we went and killed them. And it really depends on where you are, because there are certain parts in the world when, like what was happening in like Rwanda and stuff, the leaders, they didn't care.
But even
Yeah.
then, they'll justify it because we're fighting the rebels.
No, that's fine. The justification is always going, like, is there anybody who's like, yeah, I killed people and it was bad? Like I think human nature is to always justify what we do. Nobody's ever going to say like, oh yeah, this is wrong and I'm going to keep doing it on a mass scale, and then the people are going to keep supporting him. Maybe. I don't know.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
so I should not curse him unless he's a mass murderer. And, like,
No, I mean,
is
here,
that your right?
Wallahu a'lam, akhi. I really don't know. What the safest thing to do is say la'natullah ala al-zalimin and intend him in your heart. I think that's the safest way, you know what I mean? To like kind of bring some balance.
What about the hadith of the guy who killed 100 people?
Sah, and he made tawbah. You're right.
So
There's always
like,
an opportunity.
Ghazāli said.
No, kalam sah. No, you're absolutely. You know what? You're actually right. But 100 people. I mean, 100 people. I mean, 100.
Can be let go,
I mean.
people can be let go, with all due respect.
That's actually a really good point. Like, his evil's lalim, dude. Like,
Because it's not only killing when the head was broken.
yeah, man.
Talking to him.
Yeah, man.
And Zainab speaking.
Yeah, man.
There's no way we can justify for
No, man.
for Yazid. No way.
No,
And if they can justify for him, anyone else,
this is your people, bro.
anyone else.
Is it? My sheikh said it's okay, so. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if someone like, for if someone backbites somebody,
Mhm.
what they should do, seek their forgiveness.
Sure.
So is there like, let's say someone backbites behind someone who is a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can't really communicate.
They don't have access to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the rule with seeking forgiveness for anybody you've backbitten that you don't have access to. I mean, it depends on where you are, but even now, we're in an era where you can mail whoever you want or email whoever you want to seek that forgiveness. But if for whatever reason you don't have access, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi wa yaghfiru ma duna dhalika liman yasha." As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is that he doesn't forgive shirk, but he'll forgive anything lesser than it. That-
Would you say,
You seek specific tawbah.
would you say forgiveness?
Man, I mean,
DM them.
yeah, I mean, if you slide in their DMs, I'm worried about who else is you sliding into. Yeah. Okay.
I've also heard a suggestion that if you forgot to someone, if it'll do more harm to apologize to them than go to the company that you talked about them with and restore their reputation that you have.
Experience? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. That's so. I mean, that's another layer to it. Obviously. So the thing is, like, if there's a situation where they're, backbiting or something happened, and bringing it to light or bringing attention to it will actually end up causing more harm, then you have to find a way to circumvent it and find a way to establish his reputation, like you mentioned, in another way, or a different way. Or if you think silence will actually help the situation, it's better to seek silence and make tawbah and make istighfar.
If I'm something you can't get, was there an argument?
And they passed away. Yeah, no, I mean that's one way of not having access, right?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of kind of, what could happen is, let's say he walks away, random brother in the masjid, you have an argument.
Yeah.
He walks away, he says something behind his back, finds family members that he significantly.
And just keep it moving. I don't know. Like, just do the best you can, man. That's all I can say. Any other questions? Okay, you guys enjoy your break, inshallah. Any other question? I mean, Any what? Any green? Oh,